Okay, I'm now going to go over the syllabus for this fall semester of Healing and Forgiveness in Scripture. And so some of the things that you will find in the syllabus that you have gotten from Blackboard. You'll see, of course, my name and my office hours. So my office is located here in the College of Biblical Studies, and my office is right down the hallway with all the other Bible professors. You'll also see a phone number there. So the school obviously is an area code 405-425, and my extension is 5377. There is also my home number in case you want to call me, but I will let you know that if you call, most likely you'll go straight to answering machine, and then I will get notification that you would call my number, and I can call you back if you leave a number. Probably the best way to get in touch with me is by email. I do check my email regularly every day, and so if you've got some kind of emergency or some kind of question, feel free to contact me that way. My virtual office hours is just when I am online and doing more online kind of work, so you can contact me during then. Of course, we have our standard things for Oklahoma Christian courses, our mottos, mission statements. I include my worldview and teaching philosophy. You see a short description of this course. So we're trying to introduce students to the issues of healing of physical diseases in Scripture. And special attention will be given to the healing activity of Jesus and the early church, and set this healing activity in the context of ancient understandings of asking and receiving divine forgiveness, because oftentimes sickness was attributed to punishment for sin. And so when someone received healings, very oftentimes that was seen again as a divine act, removing the guilt of sin. So, and as we do this, students can learn then to think about the difference between how healing and forgiveness was understood, and what's sometimes referred to as the Second Temple Jewish period, which is the period for that Jesus lived in. It starts from the time of the destruction of the first temple in 586 BC and goes until the time of the destruction of the temple by the Romans in AD 70. And so that period is known as the Second Temple Jewish period. And by looking at how healing and forgiveness was understood in this context, you'll then be able to contrast that with how healing and forgiveness is understood today. So this is a relevant course for students to take because it helps them to think critically about their own understanding of forgiveness. What do they think happens when sins are forgiven? What they think is occurring when physical bodies are healed of diseases or of sickness, and how it may or may not be influenced by biblical portraits and contemporary issues and values. In other words, when you think about what you're saying when you say, I forgive someone, or when you think about someone having been healed, your thoughts about those are in part being formed by contemporary values or contemporary issues. And sometimes those are not the same as biblical or values that existed at the time when biblical texts were written. And so students will be able to help to learn to distinguish and critique and appreciate these biblical portraits of Jesus as a healer and as a forgiver of sins that's found in the Gospels, and representations of these healing and forgiving activities, as well as those of Paul and possibly as well the early church. So you also see some of the major objectives for the course, and so these objectives will certainly be assessed by examinations. They'll be assessed by what you do in discussion board activities. They will be assessed by how you talk and reflecting about forgiveness, your own experience of maybe having been forgiven at times or offering forgiveness to others. And there is a research component to this. When here you're going to be taking biblical text and that reference either the activity of healing or the activity of forgiveness, and you'll be able to demonstrate your ability to listen to different interpreters of these texts and what they claim these texts are indicating about Jesus as a healer, Paul as a healer, the understanding of sin and sickness, or the activity of forgiveness of sins, whether that's being practiced by Jesus, whether that's being practiced within the early Christian communities, what that looks like. So those being able to think critically, being able to show self-awareness, being able to engage with people of different ideas about a subject, and to show reflection and thoughtfulness on the subject. These are what this course hopes to assess you on. So required text, you can use the Bible. Any translation will do. There is one textbook for the course, Anthony Bash's Just Forgiveness, Exploring the Bible, Weighing the Issues. And this book is available as an electronic book, but you may want to get your own kind of hard copy book if that's more helpful to you. So as far as requirements, there are discussion board participations. There are 10 discussion boards. These are pretty significant that you get involved and you make contributions on the discussion board. You'll not only be responding to questions that I will have set or posted, but you will also be responding to other students. There is a midterm exam that will be taken later on, as well as a 4-page reflective essay on forgiveness as you think about your own experience of receiving forgiveness or offering forgiveness and what you think is going on, and especially for those who are Christians and are engaged in forgiveness, biblical texts that may be informative for you, for why you think forgiveness may be a good thing to do, or what you think you ought, why you, or what conditions you might be offering forgiveness. So as well, there's that 4-page research paper, and we'll say more about those research paper when it gets closer to the time that is due. And then there is a final exam that's offered during the final exam week. You'll find the grading scale here, as well as the discussion participation policy. And there's also a rubric that's provided for you for how I will judge and mark discussion board post. There's also a document in Blackboard about making a substantive post, and I encourage you to look at that so that you can become familiar and that you can do substantive work in the discussion board activities. So there are 2 exams, one midterm, one final. I do not give makeup unless there are some pretty big extenuating circumstances for why you could not take the exam during the time that it will be made available for you. It will be offered to you for several different days, and so you're supposed to take it during those days. As I said, there is a reflective essay on the forgiveness of sins. There's a little bit of a description about the format of it. It is double-spaced, 12-point font, standard margins. It is no less than 4 full-type pages. That means not 3.5, but 4 full-type pages. And I would do judge or grade for spelling and grammar errors. But this is just where you're kind of talking. You don't have to read anything else. You don't have to research the subject. You're just talking about your own experience of engaging with forgiveness and what it means to you. There is a research paper, and so here are some details about that research paper. There's a list in this syllabus for biblical texts that you can choose from, or if there's a text that you would like to research that deals with the subject of forgiveness or healing that's not listed, you can certainly let me know, email me, let me know about that. I'll investigate it, I'll look at it, and if it does kind of fit with what I'm looking for, then I would approve it. But you might want to just stick with the text that I have provided. You can use any guide for writing a research paper that is associated with your discipline of work. Turabian is what is used by Bible majors. Others of you may use MLA. So whatever is the format that you're most accustomed to, that's fine, just as long as you're staying consistent with that format. And again, I do kind of judge for conformity to standard research paper format, spelling, clarity of sentences, and some of these other issues. If you need help, we do have a writing center at Oklahoma Christian, and so you might want to get help from the writing center once you're working on your paper and making sure that the paper is in a good state before you submit it. Both the reflection paper and the research paper, both of these will be submitted at turnitin.com, and the links are provided again in Blackboard. In terms of bibliography for the research paper, it has to have a minimum of 4 sources. The only sources that are assessed from the internet have to be produced by individuals who are academics in the field of biblical or theological scholarship. So here you have to be very careful. There's lots of people who have written subjects on healings and forgiveness, but many of these people are maybe preachers, maybe even very popular preachers. But what we need to have is individuals who are representations of academic work. So try to find individuals who are professors at institutions who have written books that have been published by academic presses. Again, if you have difficulty whether or not a person, an author that you want to use is an academic, let me know their name, let me know their work, who the publisher is, and I can let you know whether or not this is an academic work. So be careful of just using something that's at a popular level, but we want to do something that is more engaged with peer research. You can tell if something is more academic or not is if the person is engaging with other researchers in the field, or whether or not they're just kind of writing and expressing their own interpretation of Scripture without any kind of reference or engagement, critical thought with what other people are saying. So as we get closer to the research paper and you start thinking about who you want to use, if you have questions about that, you can certainly email me your question or concern. I do accept late work on things, although you should be able to turn everything in on time. If you don't, then I'll accept work up to 7 days. I don't count Saturdays. So, but I take off 5% off of each day that it is late. So you want to be careful that you have it in on time. So there's also our policies, academic policies that are there about honesty. If you have a disability, you need to make sure let Katie Roble know in Katie's office, and then she can tell you. There's our telephone number, 425-1876, and or you can email her probably at katie.roble@oc.edu. There are also these other helps that are listed here for you. Of course, our sexual misconduct policy, especially in an online course. If anybody says anything to you, or if maybe even in another situation, someone approaches you and you are uncomfortable, certainly you want to contact those who are listed here as resource people who can help you deal with that. We don't want to tolerate sexual misconduct. We also have other numbers, important numbers for counseling in our spiritual life office. Since this is an online course, we don't really have to deal with inclement weather, but if under the unusual circumstances something traumatic happens where you are at and you don't have internet access for days, well then I would need to be notified some way about that so we can make accommodations for you. And if there is any kind of emergencies, I'll notify you by email. I'll email the entire class what procedures you need to take in case of an emergency. There's a copyright policy for this. Now, probably one of the most helpful things as well in the syllabus is the course schedule. There's also a separate document of the course schedule that you will find in Blackboard. if that will be convenient for you to look at. And so this kind of shows you what we will be doing each week and each unit that you will need to listen to or the activities that you will need to do. So really the first activity that you will actually have in terms of participation is going to be in week 3. So the first 2 weeks, all you'll have is just listening to podcasts, these things that I will describe. You may want to take notes as you listen to these things, or may mark things, because you will be examined on the content of these podcasts. So listen to them, take any notes that you think is relevant. But the first activity will be in discussion board 1. But discussion board 1 is built not just off of the unit 5, but it is actually based off of unit 2 through 5. So you'll want to listen to units 2 through 5 before you engage in discussion board 1. So starting with week 3, you'll then start seeing activities that you'll have each week. The first 6 units are going to be available at the very beginning of the semester. And then around week 4, I will open up unit 7 all the way down to unit 10. And then you can do those in advance if you want to. You don't have to wait to those weeks to participate in things or to listen to those podcasts. But you want to make sure that you are staying on target with when discussion boards are due. Discussion boards are going to need to be completed by each week on the Sunday nights. You'll need to respond to my questions by the Thursday of each week. So for instance, in week 1 of the, in week 3 with discussion board 1, you're going to complete that discussion board, or you're going to respond to my questions in discussion board 1 by the end of the day, that is 11:59 Thursday evening. And then you'll need to respond to 2 students by the end of the day on Sunday. And so that will complete that assignment. Then the next week, the same. The Thursday is the deadline for responding to me, and the Sunday night is the deadline to respond to 2 students. You can, of course, respond earlier than that, but they need to be completed. And I will email you as well when all of this is coming due. And so your first writing assignment is not until week 6, which is your reflection on forgiveness. Again, that can be done earlier, but it will not become available until the 4th week of the course. Then your midterm exam is during week 9. And then after that midterm exam is done, then units 12 all the way to unit 17 will become available. That'll take us all the way to the Thanksgiving break. Again, you can do things in advance if you want to, but everything will basically be completed before we go on that Thanksgiving break. That week 14, there are no assignments during that week. When you come back from Thanksgiving, we just have one more week of coursework, which is Unit 18, which is a podcast on the reflections on forgiveness. And you have a discussion board where you reflect on forgiveness now. You've written a reflection on forgiveness earlier on, but now having read this material and listened to these podcasts, you'll now have an opportunity to talk about your understanding of forgiveness after this course. And then the final thing is a final exam, which will be available during finals week. It'll be opened on the Monday at 8 a.m., and it has to be completed by the end of the day of Thursday of finals week. So that gives you an idea of the course. And again, if you have any questions about the course, just let me know. Thanks.